Hey guys, welcome back into the channel. And if you're new here, I'm Meg, and this space is about mindfulness, hope, and real conversations. I provide guided meditations, wisdom sessions, and just honest reflections on being human. Lately, I've also been trying to create more for solopreneurs, for those of you who are walking your own path or building something on your own and figuring out as you go, because I've been there and I am there. And in today's video, it's a little raw. So if you need a break at any point, pause this and breathe and then come back later. Seriously, take care of yourself first. In this timeless message, I wanted to talk about something that quietly runs our lives. It's the narrative, and that's our own self-talk. The way that we speak to ourselves, the thoughts that come up when someone else is talking, the reactions, maybe the judgments, the little voices, especially the ones that we don't question. Because if we're not paying attention, they run everything, like a movie trailer just on repeat going through our subconscious memory and our mind. And something happened to me recently that really kind of shook me. And I heard a name, someone I used to work with, and my body reacted instantly. My heart started racing and I felt it in my chest. Like I was right back there, back into that space that I was many years ago. And it surprised me how much was still living in my body. It brought up a lot of old stress and fear, and honestly, a little bit of PTSD from that chapter of my life. And it made me realize like how powerful our internal world really is, and not just what happens to us, but more likely what we keep saying to ourselves about what happened. So for me, I started reflecting on, was that really what happened? And so if you're watching this, I have a feeling it's not random. This message is for you. You might be feeling burned out. You might feel unappreciated. You might feel completely disconnected from the work you're doing. And I just want to say I've been there, like to all of those things. About 10 years ago, I left what most people would call a dream job, great title and a big company with benefits and stock and stability, or so we think. All of it really on paper, it looked amazing, but inside I just felt like something was off. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I remember waking up one morning with a bloodshot eye, like completely red. I went to the ER thinking something was seriously wrong. And the doctor looked at me and basically said, "You're stressed. Your body's just reacting to it." And then he even said, "You might want to think about your job." And that was it. It was nothing dramatic, just stress. But it hit me really hard because my body was telling me something my mind didn't want to come to terms with or admit. And that was that I wasn't okay. I was internalizing so much stress and probably performance anxiety. I've also shared before, I was an athlete my whole life, at a pretty high level at a pretty young age, and had a really great volleyball career. And I was always sort of on display. And I think that I always had this really high internal performance standard. And anyway, I was always trying to achieve, and I was being recognized like what I did on the volleyball court, and I was doing everything right, so to speak. And this kind of translated into my early adult life as well in terms of my career. And I never could really receive accolades or this job that was so great. It almost felt like it was too big for me and that I didn't really feel worthy of it. I was stuck in that high performance competitive mindset and always pushing and trying to prove. And it was so exhausting. And I just didn't feel like myself. Not in my body, not in my thoughts, not even in what I was wearing or how I was living my day to day. I wasn't aligned. And My dentist also simultaneously mentioned that my teeth seemed like they were, there was a layer that had been impacted by me grinding them at night, and which was also directly related to stress. And I also went to an acupuncturist who, had me do a food journal because my gut and my stomach were upset. And I thought maybe I was lactose intolerant. And there was all these things that were really like clearly coming up as signs in my body. And anyway, long story short, I left my job. I left that job. I just couldn't stand to do another day of my life on what felt like someone else's terms. I just felt like I needed to pivot. And honestly, you guys, I didn't have some perfect, graceful exit plan. I really didn't map it out at all. And I probably wouldn't recommend doing that. It just sort of came out of me one day, like something deeper took over. And I just went into a regularly scheduled touch base with my boss at that time and told her that I didn't think I was going to be there the next year and that I just was resigning. And that was it. So if you're feeling a pull to do something and you're feeling like you're so ready to just take life into your own hands, I would totally recommend doing it maybe a little differently than I did, but I think you still can. And so if you create a plan, like do that. If you can build a cushion, amazing. If you can transition slowly, like, of course, that's all beautiful. But I also want to be real with you all. And I know that sometimes you reach a point where your body and your mind and your soul just basically say, like, that's enough. I'm at the end of this road. And in those moments, your well-being has got to come first. Like, what is letting go? What is trusting the process? These really big constructs that we hear in mindfulness. If you really are letting go and trusting the process, you are trusting that if your body is giving you visible signs that it is not in a safe space or in an environment that it needs to be in any longer, it's time to move on. And the rest of the story will fill itself in as it should. And it may require you to take one step, just the one step in the direction towards what you want. If you are so burnout and it's affecting your sleep and, your relationships and your health and your mental state, it's okay to step away and it's okay to take a break. I'm giving you permission. But more importantly, I really, truly hope you guys that you give it to yourself. And look, there's practical ways that we can go about this. Trust me, I've thought about them many times since I did not make a graceful exit, but there's options. Like maybe you can take extended time off, even unpaid. There's many companies that would rather someone just take 2 or 3 weeks to kind of reorient themselves and, do whatever you need. Maybe you really just truly need a break. Maybe it's time that you can use to interview for other roles or that you can use to do something that really fills up your soul. Maybe you could look into short-term disability. If your environment is truly toxic, I urge you to look for ways to minimize the involvement of it because I just don't think work needs to completely dictate our lives, especially in corporate America. It's toxic. Companies are not looking out for your best interest, unfortunately. Maybe you freelance a little bit or consult to create a softer landing. And I know that's very overwhelming in and of itself. But you know what? Sometimes when you just have to dive into something and sort of put on your seatbelt and go, it's a little easier than lamenting and trying to plot and plan and prepare for that. But if your heart is asking for a break, listen. And, maybe there's options, you guys. Like maybe this would require you to move. Maybe there's an aunt that has an extra room in a place where you could just stand to take 2 or 3 months to gather yourself and get your plan going and not have the overhead costs that you need. Or maybe you could do a trade with, some kind of skill set that you have. Maybe you're a painter and, You can do some painting on the weekends to offset, the time that you have and maybe get some income if you do take a break. I mean, I think there's ways to do it not in a reckless way, but in an honest way. But at the end of the day, this life that we're building, this career, it's just like the way we support ourselves. It's not like who we are completely. I really want to reiterate that. And a lot of us, we are doing life's work and we are actually passionate about what we're doing. And if you're not, then this is also an opportunity for you to just sit back and ask yourself, like, what is it that I want to do? I'm certainly at my mid-age range, and I realize, like, if you look at the numbers, I could have a completely different career for the remainder of my life that has nothing to do with what I've done in the last 20 years. And, we all could. And there's no way that we can sort of look around other than just to look within ourselves to see what feels aligned. And I really urge you that you give yourself the time and space needed to figure it out. And you guys, we're always going to be figuring it out, right? So if you're hearing this today and something inside of you is like, oh my gosh, I can't keep going on like this. I need a pause. I need to breathe. Just ask yourself, what do I actually need right now? And not what looks good or what makes sense to anyone else, but what feels true to you. And if the answer is rest, please take the break and take care of yourself. I know that we can come up with a myriad of stories of the economy being in a bad place, or, your industry is really cracking down and there's not as many full-time roles. I mean, we can come up with stories until the cows come home, but your story is yours, and you're not meant to be in this like generalized bucket. You're supposed to be living your truth, and you're supposed to be following your North Star and also respecting your body and your mind and your well-being. So if you need to take a break, please take a break. And I hope this timeless message, offered you a little bit of respite and even just a break in hearing it and just knowing that you're not alone. There's always options, you guys. And honestly, one last note, if you have a boss that you're really close with, I would even entertain the thought of expressing to them that you need a break and that you might need to take a leave of absence, and just kind of gauge how that could look. Because if you're a really good employee, chances are they'd rather have you come back in 2 months than have to hire a completely new person and retrain them. So value yourself. This comes back to our self-worth and everything we work on with our meditations, but you are enough, and you owe it to yourself to feel good and to feel like you are living your truth. Okay, guys, I'll be back really soon with another message, and I'm sending you always all of my best and love. Okay, take care. Bye.